Water management at a concrete plant for today and tomorrow. We have the ability to easily and efficiently recycle or repurpose all of the wastewater material at a concrete plant. Hello, my name is Les Connard and I'm the owner of the Washout Watchdog. Most of you know me as the guy who's got a plastic bucket that hangs on the end of the chute so you can rinse off your trucks at a job site and then bring the water and the materials back to the plant. I've been in the industry since 1986 and I patented the Washout Watchdog in 2003. The problem, the regulations on how we capture, contain, secure, treat, and repurpose our concrete washout water and materials is changing, becoming more regulated, stringent, higher costs and penalties. Options are becoming more limited. Solutions at a job site. So, many of us are still able to wash out on the job site in a designated area provided by the contractor. For those of you that would like to get a chute rinse down system, there's many on the market. This usually brings back the water and material either inside or outside of the drum, and then scrape and go. This is very popular in California. Even people with rinse down systems are not using them, and many of the people are getting a fee for not washing out, like $20 a truck, because they say we have to clean out the inside of the drum much more often because we're just scraping the chutes down and taking everything back dirty. I don't like it personally. I think there's some problems with rocks flying off the back or having to wash your truck with a hammer rather than with a hose because the stuff's all drying inside, or having to go in and chip more often. But it's certainly a strategy if you don't wish to buy a rinse down system or wash out on a job site because they won't let you, then scrape and go is an option. Solutions for concrete returning to the plant. We all know this. You can make something like blocks or other products. You can actually load on top of it if you feel comfortable with that and send it back out. There's a reclaimer so that you can run it through there and recapture the rock and sand. Our pit system that we've been using the entire time in the industry, we have a 3-weir pit system and get fairly clear water by the 3rd pit that you can reuse in a few ways. Or you can windrow it or put it in a container so that it can be turned over and crushed, either for reuse at the plant or taken off site and reused somewhere else. This is a drying bunker. Out where I'm at in California, we do a lot of pump jobs. So then the pump washes a bunch of water back into the truck and you come back with, half a yard, 90 gallons wet. And so then you just, make a berm and throw it all in there and wait for it to dry. And then you have to take it over to your drying pile when you get a chance. This is going into the pit. So we're at our problem now. We're using a pit system that we all use, where the first pit gathers all the materials: cement, sand, water, rock. Sometimes you'll throw that wet concrete in there, and then you're going to have to dig this out and dry it out somewhere before you can haul it off the property. And that first scoop is really pretty dry. Even you pump the water off and you're just down to material. Well, after you get a scoop or two, then you find that you're starting to get a bunch of slop along with your bucket. And if you're drying piles across the yard, you're oftentimes making this large mess, going from where your pit system is over to a piece of real estate that you're storing all the stuff as you see behind it and trying to get it to dry. And, out in California again, it takes some time and a lot of returning over. One of the problems is that, as you can see here, it looks like we're on dirt. And you may still be in a place where you can do that. But a lot of places, as the restrictions are getting more stringent, you're having to try to dry things on a concrete slab. And this just becomes a giant wet cookie dough type thing that the outside is getting dry, but the inside is still so wet you can't haul it off. So you're turning it over. And if you're getting a lot of water on top of it, it almost becomes impossible. It starts to come down all over your yard, and it's trying to escape your yard, and that becomes a problem. Another thing that you can use is a reclaimer, where you reclaim your rock or your sand, And the problem with this is it produces a ton of cement water. For every yard you reclaim, you get 500 pounds of cement or more into your pits. And that holds a lot of water. It's really difficult to dry out. And so it creates a different problem. You may be able to reuse your rock and sand easily, but then now you have just oodles and oodles of water and cement that becomes its own problem. This is an above ground pit, and you can see they've got a reclaimer in the back, and they're using a flocculant. And so what it does is it traps all the material, the cement that's in the water, and leaves it in this bunker. And this is an interesting concept. It would be very expensive to use a flocculant to do that, but it gives you dry material, as you see on the right. Another thing we've been experimenting with, if you don't put all that rock and sand into the pit, you don't have to put your loader in and get that much of a mess. As you can see, the material on the right is much drier than what you would ever pull out of your pit. So this above ground pit, I think, is a very, very interesting idea. And you can see that it's above, all the water is going to roll into the pit. And the reason this pit is so clear is because there's flocculant in it. And my friend has a vortex in there that keeps everything bubbling and spinning, and they keep running that water through a pump into this pit and capturing all the material there. So you can see that you're probably not going to have to muck that out very often. But there is a cost to the flocculant, and the other question is, what does flocculant do with concrete? We haven't found a good answer from anybody on that, if it's good or bad. This is an above ground pit that I'm making, and because we like the concept. And what it does is you wash your rock and sand in here, and the water just rolls over. The cement and the water are rolling over. And then, as you can see on the right, the material is very dry as it comes out of it. So you pump the water off, and then you go dump it. And this is much easier to dry and haul off than if you were to dig it out of the pit. Now, you can use any sort of container, or you can use the above ground pit that we've got. But again, our philosophy is if you don't put it in the pit, you don't have to dig it out. And so it was just an idea. What do we do now with that cement water that we're talking about? Whether it's the water in pit 1 because you've captured everything before it goes in there, or the water that goes to pit 2 or pit 3. And there's a couple of options to lower the CO2 if that's what you want to do. So the clarification of that water across 3 pits leaves you a couple of options. You can use that water to wash out your trucks every day over and over, and you can use that water in a load if you feel comfortable using high pH water in a load. You can do that without any treatment whatsoever. If you want to lower the pH, since it's a high alkaline product, then you can do that with CO2 or liquid acid. And the CO2 is a gas that goes through the mechanism. Both of them have a pH control reader, and you set it to what you'd like to treat the water with until it reaches that level, and then it stops adding. The CO2 is a gas. It's much more effective and clean. There's less hazard to the employee as long as it's out in the open. If it's in a closed room and you leak CO2, there's a danger there. The liquid acid, as you know, liquid acid can burn. It seems to corrode everything it touches, but many people use a liquid acid to lower the pH. And again, you start lowering the pH from a 12.5 down to a 9 or an 8. It does a lot less, what do you call that? Reaction inside the concrete. So sometimes in the summer you can't reuse any of your water because the concrete's already a little bit too hot, and the high pH water seems to speed up the process of hydration in the concrete. This is another option. So one of the problems we've got is if we keep all the material out of the pit and we just have a whole bunch of cement and water but no materials, we can now handle the materials easier. But and the reason you want to do that is because each fine and little piece of cement is what's really holding all the water in that material. So we've been working real hard on trying to make this an easy and inexpensive way of doing this and saving some time and labor. And one of the things that you can do is a filter press, and I know that most of you know what a filter press is. And so what a filter press does is it gets the cement in the water and dries it out really rapidly and makes these cakes that can be reused and crushed or hauled off easier. Whatever you want to do, it speeds up drying out cement water. And it gives you really clear water. You can see in the back here that after it goes through the filter press, you have really clear water, a lot of clear water that you can do something with. If you treat it with CO2 and bring the pH down, it gives you even more options of what you can do with that water. So again, this is a close-up of it. On the bottom right, you see all the gray water. On the left, after it goes through the process, you see that beautiful clean water there on the left. This is something that I've been working on using a cone tank that would capture, and this works great in a stone shop, and if you use a flocculant, then it would trap all the stuff quickly and make it dry enough, but there's just such a high cost using a flocculant that most ready-mix producers don't want to do that. And but I can trap the cement, but I can't dry it without a flocculant or without a filter press that I've just shown you. So it's an idea, a concept I'm working on, because this is, again, some sort of gravity process. But when I let the cement out, it's really wet, and I don't know what to do with it. So if you treat your water or you don't treat your water, you can rebadge with it. But again, if the pH is high, there's a danger to not being able to use as much. You can wash out your trucks for sure. If you treat it with CO2, you could actually use it to wash the outside of the truck as well. Putting this water back on your ag piles, you could do that as long as the water's not going into the ground or leaving the property. You could use the high pH water if you wanted to keep it cool or keep the dust down off your ag and you brought your pH way down, then the aggregates don't increase so much the pH that's coming off that water. You can use it for dust control around your yard, that clear water, whether or not you treat it, just depending on whether or not that water is going to leave the property. And then if you have a reclaimer and you're using the slurry by forming some sort of density with that, you can use that water for that. This is another thing that you may or may not know about, but we all have to chip out our trucks. And there is a waste material in there that I'm interested in reusing. And so there's two that I know of that go in with a jet and blast on the inside, and then your material comes out. So now you're not having to worry about the dust that's created by dry chipping or a human being inside. This is a water treatment system using CO2 and a couple of the bins that I make that are taken out to the job site. And this landscaper, Bauman Landscape in San Francisco, is washing in the lower bin, treating the water in the upper bin, and reusing it right on the job site, right back in his volumetric mixers to make all the landscaping in a park or on a building. And it's pretty cool. And we have a number of ways to use these bins to treat water in and put them into another tote. And again, you can do that in anything that captures and contains. So what you have is that, as we talked about, why I'm here today is that if not now, in the future, your ways of treating the water are going to be restricted or regulated more heavily, and you may have to do some further work to make sure that you're in compliance. And so you can get a processed water discharge permit. And what that means is if you treat the water with any mechanisms, it becomes this whole other animal. As soon as you process it, it's no longer water, it's processed water. And you need to be able to analyze it, know all these things, oftentimes with government regulators. And so it makes it a little bit different, but you can get a processed water discharge permit once they've looked at your water, and you may be able to discharge it right back into the environment, right back into a creek, right back into a water source legally, because you're meeting all the regulations to do that. In some places it's easy to get, in some places it's impossible to get, and then there's right in between. A stormwater discharge permit is something you definitely know about and that you have to get. And again, you can treat that water, stormwater, in different ways. Then you have sewer water discharge permit. This is a very common thing, being able to put your concrete treated water right into the sewer. In some places, they allow the pH to be pretty high, and some places they want it lower and lower, but you certainly can't be putting anything other than clear water into the sewer system. And then there's a lot of exceptions out there, and you need to know if you are in a place that you have an exception or not. And Doug's going to be able to talk to you about all the regulations and things like that. What I wanted to present to you today are all the things that I've seen out there that people are using to treat their water. So thank you very much for your time and attention. And again, I have a booth here, so if you want to talk to me afterwards, you can hunt me down.